We're here today with Jen Weigel. Jen, can you tell us what you do here in Chicago and now globally and how your journey began?
Well, hi, Abigail. It's wonderful to be here. I am a storyteller, and the storytelling platforms have changed over the years, but I know that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I started as a traditional journalist, worked in every station, ABC, CBS, NBC, WGN, and television, then hopped over to radio for a while, then print journalism as a columnist for the Chicago Tribune and the Chicago Sun-Times, always trying to take a positive spin to what was happening, talking about what was working instead of what was broken. And what I found was the traditional media outlets only wanted to talk about what was broken and focus on fear instead of focus on innovation and inspiration. And so I always believed that information can be innovative and inspiring. I called it in TV news. Like we can just be in it together. And nobody agreed with me. I think I was ahead of my time 20 plus years ago. So my father passed away from a brain tumor when I was 30, and he was only 56. And he was also a journalist and a writer and a sportscaster here in Chicago named Tim Weigel. And when he passed away, I just went on this journey of interviewing as many people as I could that knew about other dimensions. I was in deep grief. I was searching for answers, and I found myself interviewing people that had had near-death experiences, traumatic brain injuries that caused incredible intuitive openings, almost spiritual awakenings, if you will. And I found myself in my own kind of spiritual awakening and needing to get as much information as possible. And I believe that we have to keep asking questions and gathering information. Otherwise, we'll keep doing things the same way that we've done them for ever and ever. We'd still think the world is flat. We'd still be smoking in airplanes. We'd still be doing a lot of things if we didn't gather information and get educated and enlightened. And so my goal now is to continue to tell these stories, tell my story, tell other people's stories about people having, I guess you'd call it a sixth sense. I believe that we all are born with intuition. That is my core belief now, and that we are programmed to think there's something weird about it because of people who live in fear, and that really there are two main vibrations. There's love and there's fear, and then all sorts of different levels in between. But you cannot be in love and be afraid, and you cannot be afraid and be in love. Really, you cannot hold another in love if you are steeped in fear, and vice versa. They're in different buildings. They're not even in the same building. There are different levels of different buildings. And once I realized that, it really changed things for me. Because anytime someone came at me with something ego related or fear related, I'd say, oh, look at that. They're in fear. They can't get to love because they're afraid. And it's very human to be in fear. We live in this dimension where fear drives the ship. And so it's a lot of work to choose love and light. But that is where I am today. I'm actively choosing to be in love and light and shine a light in every platform I have to tell stories.
I completely agree with you. And I really like the way you make that so visual. I've never thought of it like that, that fear has a building and love has a building. That's so specific and so true. And they're on different frequencies. Can you, for people who are just new to this type of language of emotions having frequency, can you talk about that and also what you've seen with these journeys? Because you've really embedded yourself and immersed yourself into these incredible near-death stories. There are a lot of people who may listen to this who have no idea about this. This is just their first toe in the water of this information. Can you give us a few of these stories?
Yes. So when I was working at the Chicago Tribune, a woman came, I got an email asking if I wanted to interview a woman named Dr. Mary Neal, who wrote the book To Heaven and Back. She was an orthopedic surgeon. I think she still is an orthopedic surgeon. And her husband is a surgeon, so very science-based. And she was kayaking with her husband and a group in Chile, and the kayak flipped, her knee got stuck, and she died. She was without oxygen for 30 minutes, which the fact that she was alive after that is a living miracle in and of itself. So she was coming to Chicago to speak at Evanston Hospital to tell her story for the International Association for Near-Death Studies, the Chicago branch of IANS. And that is the acronym, International Association for Near-Death Studies, IANDS. And there's a Chicago branch. So she was coming to town to speak and asked if I wanted to interview her and would I want to do a story for the Chicago Tribune. So immediately I said yes. And I went to my boss and I said, look, we've got this incredible story. She's a doctor. She was dead. She came back to life. Da, 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 da. And they were like, nope, too weird. No, thanks. They didn't want it. And I was like, but this is no. So I told her I would interview her anyway, and I would find a place for that interview. And I didn't know where it was going to go, but if I ever find myself telling stories, I would tell your story because I think it's such a fantastic story. And it just crosses all the boundaries of frequency and all this stuff. And so she came down and I heard her story and she told me what she saw when she was up in the light. And she literally saw that it was like we were all connected, like an Oriental rug. It was this beautiful pattern from up there. But down here, it's dark and it's light and it feels like, no, I'm getting stepped on. It feels so micro down here. But from the global perspective of seeing everything, it was gorgeous. And that we need to have these ups and downs and we are all connected. That's the big one. We think, oh, I hate my neighbor. They're so annoying. We're part of the same rug, people. We have to understand that we are part of the same tapestry that creates this pattern. And so I started doing research on that. And then there's a wonderful book called Power versus Force, written by a doctor, Dr. David Hawkins, who had his own near-death experience. And as his studies showed, he came up with this number system for frequencies of different things like fear and love and anxiety and apathy and depression and all of these things, greed, even surrender. They come at different number frequencies, and he did just thousands and thousands of tests. And I found it so fascinating. But again, when a doctor has these sort of out-of-body experiences, that I feel is a bridge that needs to be discussed. It's very important. We can still be steeped in science and understand there's more going on than what we can see and understand. And when Dr. Mary Neal told me, she said, I want you to start noticing those, that's weird kind of moments. And whenever you think that's weird, it's not. It's actually something bigger. She says it's God, it's source, it's the divine. It's the ever, it is that frequency of love, of all connectedness working on your behalf to show you that we are all connected. And when you acknowledge those that's weird moments and just go, I saw that one. They then realize your frequency is turned on. It's sort of like if you're out at sea and you need help and you put the flare up, your flare goes up. Source sees your flare and goes, Weigel's turned on. Let's give her more signs, And then they just sort of fly down and you will have so many signs that you won't understand how often it's happening. It won't be able to be provable by the laws of probability and all these things mathematically that people want to give proof to, right? So after I met Dr. Mary Neal, that afternoon I got home and at my front door was a heart-shaped piece of mud. I mean, like a perfect heart, but it was mud, and the beauty of this mud heart, I took a picture of it. I put it on Instagram. I looked up, I said, got it, guys. That was a good one. And I have been seeing heart shapes now ever since I post them on my Instagram feed, my Facebook feed, because I can't believe the frequency of how often it's happening. I see them frequent. I meant like frequent, but it's funny that I just used the word frequency. I can't believe how frequent I am finding myself in that frequency. And so, yes, the heart-shaped dog vomit. I mean, they're very funny, whatever. It's hilarious because they know I am a smart ass and I have a sense of humor. So they want to keep me laughing. And that's another thing, laughter, that really takes us out of fear and angst. So when you are feeling at your lowest of lows, there's all this evidence that laughter, yoga, all of these things, it changes your body's chemistry. So from a physiological standpoint, if you're in illness and sad and depressed, you better put on a comedy because it will take you out of your way. It will take you out of that feeling of woe is me, it's all bad, everything's wrong, back to you. And that's what I couldn't stand when I was working in the news business. Everything's wrong, back to you. And that's what I felt at CBS when I worked for CBS. And I won an Emmy for my reporting. I took my work very seriously. I still do. And I think there are stories that need to be told that are not about everything's wrong, back to you.
God, that was brilliant. I've got so many questions. So you do so many things to get these stories into the world and help people connect, because you write books, you're a public speaker, you have a healing conference, and you have your podcast, and also I just want to segue into this only because you just talked about comedy. You're actually doing some stand-up comedy, and then I want to go back to the healing conferences, but it's just because you are really funny just naturally, and such a brilliant speaker. So talk about the stand-up comedy, because I can't even believe you do it. You're so brave.
Well, it's funny that I used to do it back in 2017, 2018, before the pandemic, just as a side thing, because I was trained in theater and some of the things that were happening in my life were just so bizarre. And I thought, well, what if I got on stage and talked about it for 10 minutes or so? And it just was sort of this hobby, if you will. And then I did a one-woman show, and it was an hour and a half of telling stories. And so I'm like, well, and a lot of people told me it was very funny, even though there was, this whole, oh, my dad died, my dead dad in the middle of it, but very humorous with how you can face your adversary moments, right? The people in your life that push against you, and all of the things that show up. And most comedy is tragedy, and timing equals comedy, right? And so I felt like, wait a minute, there's a lot going on here. And when I was talking about my life, I mean, people say that I'm sort of like the Angie's List now for healers, psychics, and mediums, because I spend my time trying to find legitimate people. I now know there are people wired differently than I am. I know that everybody's born intuitive. It's just whether we choose to work that muscle or not, and how we choose to show it in the world. Yes, there are charlatans out there that give the rest of the really good practitioners a bad name, but there are some incredible people just wanting, and you're meeting so many of them for your show, which is important to tell everyone about them. And that's what I feel I'm supposed to do too, is tell people about these really legitimate practitioners that just want to help heal and connect. And so, as I was going through all of that and talking about my experiences, I was thinking of the lens of my now teenager son, where I'm fielding all of these texts, like, and just became part of my comedy act. Like, Jen, my neighbor's got a ghost in her basement that looks like Mrs. Garrett from Facts of Life. Do you have anybody in your Rolodex who can help? And so I'm like having my son read the text, and he's reading the text, and he's like, who's Mrs. Garrett? Like, nothing about the ghost in the basement. Like, that's so normal to him now. But who the heck is this Mrs. Garrett? And what's Facts of Life? I'm like, oh, it's a show from the 80s. She was the den mother. Don't worry about it. But I started thinking, this is so funny. I got a text from a friend in Rome who's a medium. He says, Jen, I just got back from the Colosseum. I met a few gladiators named Claudius and did it and did it. Can't wait to tell you their story. And I'm like, I think I know their story. It's just, so this stuff you can't make up. It started to make me laugh. And I thought, well, maybe it'll make other people laugh. So I talk about all of this in my stand up. And I'm leaving in the morning tomorrow to go to Colorado to do my one woman show and tell these stories, because if people can laugh and then be inquisitive at the same time, that's a win win. And that is where I feel there's something missing in this space. And humor is a huge part of it. And if you can't laugh while you're talking to somebody who says they're talking to your dead people, then what's the point? So that's where that all came out.
That's so I'm just thinking just how casual it is. Yeah, there's a ghost downstairs. What should I do? Because I have similar conversations with my kids, and they just switch off now. Oh no,
Right.
no more of that.
Right.
So can I talk about your healing conferences? Because I went to a weekend of them, and I thought it was brilliant. And it did make me chuckle on the inside, as everybody I was meeting on my particular table. What do you do? I'm an intuitive, I'm a psychic, I'm a medium, I'm a healer. I think, oh God, I'm with my people. So can you talk
Right.
about that?
Well, yes, I started doing these conferences with my friend Amy O'Keefe called the All Souls Conference the first weekend of November, where we just wanted to bring like-minded people together, have some speakers, and see how we could all heal together and be inspired by being with people in a gorgeous setting. I mean, we do this up in Lake Geneva in Fontana, Wisconsin, at the Abbey Resort, and we've done different resorts around the Lake Geneva area, but it's just a kind of a getaway conference of meeting like-minded others and bringing people there to talk, to heal, to inspire. And then when the pandemic hit, we couldn't do that. And so I had started this Zoom community called the Spiritual Social Club, which is basically we were meeting on Zoom once a week with different intuitives, different authors, different teachers, and people were just hungry to connect because we couldn't be together physically. And I have found that the Spiritual Social Club has just taken off. And I was just in Long Island doing a version of it. I mean, there's something in the water in Long Island. There are so many freaking psychic mediums there. It's crazy. One of my favorites right now is a gentleman named Nick Lodato, who is 28. He's a nurse at the ICU in Long Island. He is so intuitive. When he was in high school, he was feeling so anxious he almost couldn't finish high school. He almost had to be homeschooled. And he realized what was happening is he's what they call an empath, where his cylinders were wide open. All of his chakras were wide open. He was feeling things 5 rows down. You know, he was feeling everybody else's emotions and didn't know that it wasn't his, that it was others. And that's what we're seeing now is this epidemic of young people absorbing other people's energy without the understanding of their toolbox. So we started a class on Zoom for the Spiritual Social Club called Anxiety is Your Superpower. And Nick taught us this incredible class, and we're doing it now again. It's going to be, I'm sure, sold out every time because so many people are anxious. So many people's young adults and teens are anxious. They don't know what it is, so they just want to take a pill and fix it and just do the drive-through pharmaceutical thing. And that's not what you need to do. It's all about understanding energy, right? Understanding what's yours, what's not yours. And once you know thyself, it really is about knowing your energy, how it runs, how it feels, how you feel when you're solid, when you're grounded. You know, we're all just kind of hovering around doing our thing. But if we get grounded, really, it is like grounding yourself, understanding that there's energy flowing in your body. If we could see what's going on in our energetic system the way we can see our physical body. I was looking online last night trying to join a new gym because my gym membership just expired. And I'm like, well, let's see. Oh my gosh. There are 14 different kinds of gyms within a 3-mile radius, right? Because that's all about the physical, wanting to look good. There is no energy gym, brain gym, nothing. If we could see how traumatized our brains are, we would have brain bars on every corner, but we can't. So that's the part where I'm trying to bring awareness to the energy, the thoughts, what's going on in our energetics really affects everything in our lives. And once we can kind of get that understanding, it is a superpower to understand your energy and to be able to control it. But first, it starts with knowing your own system. It's an operating system like a computer. Once you know your operating system, then if something comes in like malware or a virus, or, you know, Nick Lodato talks about it's your windows are open. And when your windows are open and stuff flies in, you feel it, you're like, ooh. So he shuts his windows. And then now he's learned how to open his windows with the screen on. Think about that. So the mosquitoes can't get in, but the breeze can. And there's a difference. So just having that visual of, wait a minute, I don't feel good. Let me shut my windows. Boom, 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 boom. All right, now you're contained. Now you're safe. Now I'm a little stuffy. Let's open the window, but keep the screen on and you can breathe a little bit and you can exchange with other people's energy. And it's just learning these tools. It takes time, but so does running a marathon. You don't just sign up for the Chicago Marathon and run 26 miles and go, oof, where are we going for lunch? You have to train. You have to train for it. And so that's what I'm trying to help people understand is to train their brain and their energetics that they can be in control here. It's your superpower. It's not something that debilitates you so that you have to take 17 pills to be able to go to school in the morning. That is where we have to get away from that way of thinking. And that I'm very passionate about that because my son is so anxious and intuitive. And until he understood and talked with someone like Nick Lodato, who is now a functioning amazing member of society working in an ICU. Then he realized, oh, wait a minute, I'm not alone. I'm okay. And I can do this. And that's what I want to empower people to get them to understand they can do this. They just have to understand what the heck is happening.
Absolutely. I'm just thinking about the brain bars and actually how slack we are around energy and that, yeah, that sort of idea, you just take a tablet. It's so ludicrous and short-sighted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I really feel that that could be the future. I mean, we have the Genius Bar over with the Apple Store, and everybody goes there to figure out their device. But where are we going to figure out this device? This is the most important device that we have to understand. And I love the brain research that's out there. Hemisync meditation is another thing that I've embraced. And what that is the binaural beat uh, was discovered, Monroe, the Monroe Institute, Bob Monroe started doing research in the 80s on different kinds of tempos and tones and percussive sounds called binaural beat. He calls it the hemisync, HEMI-SYNC. And at the Monroe Institute, they started working with soldiers who'd come back from war and helping them heal their brains. So it was reconnecting the neurons that were disjointed from trauma and from PTSD and from all of the things that they experienced, both physically and emotionally, right? And energetically. And once those neurons could be fired back together, these people were so intuitive, Abigail, that they were used by the government in CIA programs to do remote viewing, which was basically sitting in a room and finding the bad guys in Afghanistan. I mean, that to me, funded by the government, you can Google it, everybody. The remote viewing program started because they realized our brains are capable of so much more than what we're giving it credit. And this man, Bob Monroe, tapped into that. And why we aren't going with that, it's because why? It's not a moneymaker like all the drive-through pharmaceuticals, maybe, but it's unfortunate and it's sad because we could be creating geniuses every single day instead of having to worry about mass shootings in our schools. All of that stress and anxiety and being disconnected enough to feel that you need to hold an AK-47 and just splatter everybody dead. That comes from a complete disconnect from source, from love, from the frequency that keeps us whole. And the brains that are so fragmented that they think they could do that if they got like this and connected the neurons like this. The things we could do, Abigail, the things we could do.
I know it's an unlimited creative potential for humankind.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to I was just thinking of something. When you were working for the news, if you look back at yourself then and the things that they got you to focus on, and you look now at the way you see life and what you focus on, can you talk about the difference in you in those different roles?
Oh yeah, I found some air checks, we call it, right, from my days as the news anchor lady. And I was like, look at my hair, what was I thinking? What am I wearing? It was so long ago. It was a lifetime ago. And I remember that girl, and I'm going to call her a girl because even though I was in my 20s, I was so simple in a lot of ways. It was about ego. I was so in the third dimension. It was really about, I just want to make a good living so that I can have a nice house and have, be promoted and do all that. It was all material. It was all material. And then my father passes away and I realized, well, wait a minute, this takes me out of my material world. And now I'm exploring all these other things. And I'm at a different frequency now. And that came though from a lot of trauma. Okay. I had not only my father pass away, but both of my in-laws at the time I was married, and then I got a divorce and I had my son and all these things. Well, I had my son, then I got the divorce. But all this trauma that happened to me rewired my brain. And then I had to bring it back together like Humpty Dumpty. I had to do the hemisync binaural beat to get those wirings back together. And then once I did that, I'm walking on a horse farm, Abigail. I'm hearing a horse. And I mean, this is in my comedy too. I'm like, anyone else hearing a horse's thoughts? And it's like, what? I mean, what? It doesn't make any sense, but I know what's happening. I'll give you an example. I was literally up at this horse farm and one of the horses wasn't eating. And so the owner of the horse farm texted me and said, can you please check on Liberty? That's her name, the horse. Something's wrong. She's not eating. So I'm like, oh, great. I'm a vet to horses, right? So I got quiet and I meditated and I'm like, okay, Liberty, let's try to get some peace and calm and see what's going on. And right when I did that, I heard window. And I mean, when intuition happens, it's the bird that flies in front of your window shield. It's it's your first thought is your best thought. It just goes like you're not thinking about it. Your mind is going over the same thing over and over and over again. That's not intuition. That's your brain. That is Jen's brain thinking about my to-do list, my shopping list, my this, my that, or even saying your manifestations. Those are wonderful. You're putting them programming in your brain, but that's part of your brain. Now, intuition comes out of nowhere and flies in front of your windshield, and you're like, whoop. Like the other day, I was thinking about a friend and I literally heard appendix, and I'm like, what? What? So I found out they had a child who had to have their appendix taken out. What? I don't have any additional knowledge of that. I don't understand what that is. I know I caught a brain wave. It went into my brain, and so with Liberty, I hear window and I'm like, what the hell is this? I go into the barn and Liberty's not in her stall. There's this other horse in her stall that she's had for 20 plus years, her stall with a beautiful window. Liberty had been moved to the back of the barn into this small stall, no window. I didn't know this. I walk into the barn, I get to her barn, to her stall rather. She looks at me and I honestly felt as if this were a cartoon, Dr. Doolittle. And she looked at me and it was like, I felt her feel shame. Her head was down. What did I do wrong? And where's my window? I mean, it was just like, okay, tell that one to CBS in 2002. There's no way I could have ever embraced that, understood that without having gone on the journey where I've interviewed all these people who have been on the other side and come back and understood that we have brain waves. We can connect to any species. If we raise our vibration and our frequency enough, we can connect to all sorts of, I can connect to someone in London just as easily as I can connect to the workman out back, if we have the intention of connecting to that frequency. And my intention was to connect to Liberty's frequency and find out what was wrong with her. So she was moved back to her old stall and she ate and everything was fine. And she was happy and she was back. She just wanted to know why she was moved. And the owner that had called me didn't even realize she was moved. That was done by someone else. So it was fascinating to me. And that to me went, ooh, this is weird. What does this mean? It means we're all connected in a frequency when we have that intention. And I can't explain it other than to say, don't worry, I'm not hanging a shingle that says animal whisperer. I'll talk to your horses. That's not what I want to do. But if we are all in some sort of situation where we want to get answers and clarity and open up our intuition to information that will help the situation, anything is possible. I've seen people who are miracles, like Dr. Mary Neal, shouldn't be alive. I personally have experienced miracles. And I'm laughing because I pulled this coffee mug today, which says believe in miracles, which is weird. I haven't used this. You can't believe in them unless you've experienced something. So really, it's sort of that you have to feel it to heal it. You have to know it to believe it. And so I have experienced a personal miracle that now has changed my way of thinking, that time and space can be bent just for you. It can happen. I've seen it and I don't understand it, but that blew my circuits. So we really have to kind of get out of our own way to think that we know everything. Like I said, it goes back to believing the world is flat or that you can smoke because someone says it's safe. We have to keep asking questions. We have to. And miracles can happen. Frequencies outside of our normal day to day do exist. But it starts with kind of breathing in that love frequency. You got to get out of fear. So none of this is a possibility. The miracles, the connecting to your intuition, none of that can happen when you're afraid and you're in fear. You have to calm your mind and get out of the fight or flight, right? Which is our survival mechanism. Fight or flight, must find food or we'll die. Okay, I got that. But then you have to get back, you have to breathe, you have to calm your mind, find an operating system that works for you. I call it now in my Zooms your healing hygiene. If we get up every morning and we brush our teeth, we have the capability to have a little healing hygiene. And it starts with just 30 seconds of conscious breathing while you're brushing your teeth. Combo it. You can do it though. And people say, oh, I just don't have time to incorporate wellness into my life. And I say, you can't afford not to have time. If you have time to brush your teeth, you have time to bring in 30 seconds of wellness when you start your day. Just have a Post-it that says believe in miracles while you're brushing your teeth. That's it. Even just that frequency will absorb into your energy field. And you can then start to think, oh, I wonder if miracles are possible. Then what happens is you're putting out the word miracles, 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 miracles. And as you emanate that vibration out, miracles, I believe in miracles, I believe in miracles, the energy will reciprocate. Like attracts like. So if you're projecting out, I hate you, fear, I'm worried, lack, lack, lack. the universe will bring back lack. If you project out love, love, miracles, miracles, all the universe sees is this frequency of, oh, she's talking about love and miracles. Let's give her more. So remember, what you put out, you get back. Like attracts like. That's science, people. That's not woo woo. And that's what we forget.
Jen, can you take over the world, please?
Right now, I can only make a cup of coffee and maybe get my son to school on time, but I'll try.
Yeah, what I'd really love to see is, I'd love to see every news channel in the world for 5 minutes each morning. They just put your voice up telling people how to see the world, because it's so organized and it just makes sense.
Well, thank you. It took me 22 years to get to this kind of organization. Then that's the thing. I see all these people, they're 25 years young, right? And they're putting out their life coaching business and their intuitive business. And I'm like, what are you going to teach me? I mean, no offense, but what have you learned in your 25 years? You need about 25 more for me to take you seriously. Now, Nick Lodato is 28, but he can speak to those teens that can't leave the house with their anxiety because he lived it. So I absolutely want his advice. You know what I'm saying? But we can't think that we suddenly know something because we went, we woke up and felt like, oh, I my hands turned on and now I want to heal everybody. That's wonderful. And keep practicing. Practice makes perfect. And I want to encourage everyone to bring in their gifts and use them and be honest with the fact that you don't know what you don't know. I would never have been able to talk like this when I worked at CBS in the early 2000s, ever, because I didn't have the container for it and I didn't have the knowledge. And now, hundreds of interviews later, I have so many audiobooks compiling all of these interviews and conversations and the podcast, like you talked about. But I find that during the pandemic, I had people reaching out to me from Australia and Japan and Vienna. They found the audiobooks. They needed the conversation. And when you need it, it shows up. So I tell people, if you wake up every day and say, show me the next steps for my highest good and the highest good of all, no matter how it looks, help me trust it. And the real problem we have, and this is an epidemic too, in addition to the anxiety, is a lack of self-care, self-love, because we're all reaching outside of ourselves to fill up our cup, right? Whether it's that man or that glass of Pinot Noir or that chocolate, or my dog is coming over here. She's loving the energy. She's literally like, oh, what's happening? That animal. We reach outside of ourselves to get that filled up feeling. And really, that is a self-love deficiency. There's a great therapist, Ross Rosenberg, who talks about SLDD, self-love deficiency disorder. And I don't like labeling things with disorders, but a lack of self-love will create all of these needy behaviors. If I just had this, then this. If I just got that, then that. And that's where I came from, that model, when I was in media. If I just got another promotion, then I'd be happy. If I just got a bigger house, then all would be well. If I just this, then this. And that's not, I know so many really rich people who are miserable because they have no self-love. There's nothing filled up inside. And so all that stuff on the exterior is not going to get that container filled up, because you can't pour yourself a cup of coffee if your pitcher is empty. You can't share. There's nothing to share. So I use that analogy a lot. How full is your tea pot? Then you can start to share with others. If you have an empty teapot, what are you sharing? You're deprived. You can't share unless you're filled up. And it's not selfish, it's self first. It's just filling up your container. You'll be a better parent, better coworker, better partner, all of it, better dog mom when you're filled up. And we forget that. Our car light goes on and we're like, better take it to the mechanic. Car, fix engine. But we are on fumes all the time. We're not fixing our engine. We're not getting the best gas in our tank. And we need to start doing that. And I'm guilty of it too. I'm not standing here in this like holier than thou space. I'm standing here saying, I'm a human. I screw up. I forget. And I need to remind myself always. That's why I have Post-its on my mirrors to remind myself. I put one in my car the other day, just to remind myself, because you look at the radio every time you get in the car. Why not look and have a sentence pointing back, thank you for the miracle today. It's right there. Thank you for the miracle today. And again, there you are, putting that frequency out of miracle. And when you put that tempo out, the universe answers back with that frequency, because that's what you're putting out, not lack, not fear, not judgment, just possibilities.
Yes, I've got post-it notes around my bathroom mirror too, and I do look at them, and I always connect. I think I've got one saying, "I am courageous, and
Yeah.
love is the answer." And
Mhm.
every time I look, I think, "Oh, I am courageous. Oh, love is the answer."
Yeah.
So
Right.
it does help to remind you, because it's very easy to get into anxiety and start worrying about something, and to breathe through it and to connect with something that gives us hope. It does work.
I got a text from somebody, Jen, again, another Jen, the workman in my house left in a panic because some energy was throwing drills, like it was like an episode of one of these shows you see on the Travel Channel, where it's like, oh, and they wanted me to come through with my, camera and my tuning forks and all this crap. And I'm like, oh God. So I, and this was very real. Like, these people don't believe in this stuff until the tools get thrown. Then suddenly they're believers, right? There was some very, so I went there with a friend of mine who specializes in making house calls on this stuff. And he's got very simple tools, sage and white candles. And, and here's the thing for anyone listening to this, when you walk into a house, if it feels icky, you feel it. You can tell if someone just had a wicked fight right before you walk in. It's sort of like in the air. I was at the dog vet last week. My dog was having some stomach issues, and this dog came up and was in total anxiety, and then took a huge dump right on the floor, in total anxiety. And everybody makes that face. We're all like, oh, the lady cleaned it up and they left, but we still smelled it. We remembered it. We felt it. It left an imprint, and it was emanating in the room, even though it was taken out and thrown away. That is an example of, and then other people came in and they were like, they could smell it too. It was like, what just happened? You know, and I was like, well, Wrigley, the Shih Tzu, just took a poop, like, but I'm telling everyone that story because it's the same thing that happens with energy. If somebody comes into a room and starts screaming obscenities and verbally abusing everybody and da 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 da, they leave that imprint just like a steaming pile of dog crap. And it emanates throughout the space. And you will feel it. You're not immune to it. That is the same thing. So don't spend time with people who do that in your space. I was just having an exchange with a friend, and she took a steaming poop right in the rah, 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 and I was just like, I have to hang up now. I'm not going to take this. I know you didn't see this going in this direction, Abigail, but this is the way it goes. And so I'm telling people that because so I walk into this haunted house where the tools are being thrown. And I said, you know what? These owners have to say, they have to command their space. Get out. This is my house. Get out. You cannot be here if you're not for my highest good. Get out. I command this space to only hold the frequency of love and peace and joy. And that's it. No dog poop allowed. You just have to literally put up the boundary. And so I said to play Mozart at full volume. Tell your device to play classical music at full volume, like the highest frequency classical music. That's pumping that love vibration into a space. That's why you do that for your animal when you leave. It calms the space. It literally, again, fear cannot coexist with that love frequency. So you have to do all of these things. It's hygiene, it's healing hygiene, and we can do it in our space. We can do it in our relationships. We can do it with our energy field, all of it. But I give that example of the dog poop because that literally, it left such an impression with me. Like, wow, she cleaned it up, took it outside, put it in the trash bin outside, and yet we can still smell it, feel it. And then new people were walking in going, ugh, what just happened here? And that's really what it is. It's a residue, it's a film. So, what are you putting out there? Really think about that. How much of that residue are you just extending into other areas of your life because you're choosing that frequency of crap? Don't do it. Don't leave that icky residue. You know how that feels. So why would you want to put that out there? And for me, I'm a visual person, and that's why I come up with all these visual things, from the fear and love in the building or the dog crap in the lobby, because that helps me. And if it helps somebody else, then great. But that's how I'm wired. I'm a visual person.
Yeah, very, very specific visuals there. Thank you for those. Next time somebody annoys me on the phone, I'm going to say, "Are you shitting on this phone call?"
Yeah.
So
I
let's
didn't know if
go.
I could say shit, but yes, yes. Are you shitting on this experience? And that really is what it is taking an energetic shit. And we do it all the time, in our heads, in our relationships, in our phone calls with people, with work, whatever it is. Just, it happens. So we just have to be, again, I don't have all the answers. I just know what the numbers say in frequency. And I'm trying to get myself, as we say, to love and above. The frequency of love is at 500, according to Dr. David Hawkins. So if we can get out of apathy, which is like 20, and up to love, that love frequency, think of what you love the most, whether it's your child or your animal, right? Or even an experience. Like I was thinking of a wedding of one of my good friends, and how wonderful and beautiful that day was. Just recall a time when you felt filled up. We can all recall that. And whatever that is, put that on a post it. Put that right in your mirror so that the first thing you think about when you're brushing your teeth is that frequency of filled up, loved up. We all have to get loved up. And that is our responsibility, but it takes work. We can't just wake up and be like, okay, I'm in love today. And then you look at your pile of bills, and then you look at your kid who's sick, and then you look at this, and you look at this, and you look at this. You can face all of that in a better frequency if you fill your cup up, because then you're just not like so exhausted. Because really, we feel like we're just kind of trudging along with anvils tied to our ankles if we don't have a good healing hygiene.
I love all your visuals because I see them.
Yeah.
That's so specific. I've got lots in my head now. It's a library of visuals, including the dog, poor thing. I'm very anxious about dog, but I'm very glad that the horse found a new home, went back to her old stall. So
Right.
we're rounding up this conversation now, and I just want to say that was brilliant, and I hope people listen to your advice. And again, new world leader Jen Weigel.
Thank you, darling. I will be looking for employees to join on this green bar mission. So
Yes,
thank you for being on the journey as well. It's wonderful to find like-minded others, and I respect you and everything you're doing. So thank you. Big hugs to you.
and big hugs back. Thank you.